Hey guys, welcome back to Mediocre Arts and Crafts. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of our cardstock mini album with the gusset binding. This album will be decorated with this paper pack and the coordinating items in this collection. This is the P13 Garden of Books collection, and today we will start using some of this, so I'll go through that in a minute. But first, we are going to finish up the base of our album. So we're going to go ahead and put in the pages. We are using Brutus Monroe macchiato cardstock. It is fabulous, and I'm not sure that the color is really showing up well on the screen, but it is a fabulous dark brown color. That looks a little better, but probably depends on your screen. And so that's what we're using for the front and back covers and base of our book. If you weren't able to join me for part 1, I'm going to go ahead and link part 1 below. And I will also start a playlist on my channel so that once all of the parts are done, you can watch it from beginning to end just by clicking on the playlist. So if you remember, in the last video, we got to this point here where we have our front cover, our back cover, a couple spines that are pretty thick, and the flap, front flap. And here is our gusset binding that we glued in. Now, you'll see I have some notes here. I was using Post-it notes. If you've watched some of my previous videos, I use a lot of Post-it notes in mini albums to kind of remind myself of orientation of pages and little notes. But the Post-it notes kept falling off. And so I found a better solution for me, and it is a little more economical. Because I tend to buy this when it's on sale. This is the mint tape from scrapbook.com. And so you'll see that I am just tearing off little pieces to make reminders for myself as I go. So I have my pen, and what I'm going to do here, so we're going to be gluing in pages today, but something that I thought of that I don't want to forget is that I'm adhering magnets to the front as the closure. So I am going to put 2 pieces of tape where the magnets are going to go, so that when I start gluing things down and covering things up, that I don't forget to adhere my magnets, because I want them to be under the paper, not over. So those are my little M's for magnets, and I may do multiple, but just having the one there will remind me of that. And so now what I did is, this is where we left off, except for you can see I do have some notes. I hope they're not too distracting. But what we did, or what I did since then, is I went ahead and I rounded a couple of the corners. So I rounded the inside cover here. So now there you can see it. I just rounded these sides, and you can use whatever corner rounder. You don't have to use a corner rounder. I find that with mini albums though, especially this style where there are a lot of pages and a lot of different elements, if they're made with cardstock, the corners are going to hold up better if you round them. If we were using chipboard, it'd be a little different, and I wouldn't probably round those most of the time because it's sturdier. So I'm going to go ahead and add the pages in. For our pages today, I made, and I can show you my little notes, I made 8 pages because we have 8 of these little points in our gusset here. And, excuse me, and these pages are 8.5 by 5 3/4, and I need 8 of these. So as I was sitting in my chair, I just kind of wrote this dimension down on the tape and put it on here just so you know, I was kind of watching TV and spacing out and just cutting down some paper. So that just kind of was a visual reminder for me, so I didn't have to go back and do math a bunch of times. And then I also reminded myself to round only 2 of the corners, because these are going to be in our album like this, and we only need these 2 corners rounded. This side will be glued onto our binding. So once you have your 8 pieces, you go ahead and just get them glued in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And this is pretty simple. We are just going to take one sheet and adhere it to one of these So this part is pretty simple. We are going to take one of our sheets and glue it to one of these little tabs, these gusset parts, and I'm going to glue them in front. It really doesn't matter whether you glue them in front or in back of this piece, because we are going to cover it with the scrapbook paper, the designer paper, when we're done. But for this purpose, I just like to put them in front. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and glue these down. I'm just going to put a strip of glue along the side and adhere it. Try to get it down into the gusset flat. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to your microphone that's too close to your face, if you have one. That you want them even at the top and bottom. So if you work from one, of course, they should be cut to just the right size. So if you have it even at the bottom here, it should be just fine. You just want to make sure that you have it flat against the page when you glue it down. And so I use art glitter glue. It dries pretty quickly, so I like it for this. I really like it for everything. And that looks like way more glue than it actually is, but I'm just going to set my paper along the bottom of the gusset here and flip it up and make sure it is flat against the page. And so I'm holding this here, but I'm going to go ahead and grab my bone folder. And I'm going to press the gusset tab right up against kind of where my finger is and follow along here so that it adheres well. And if you like, you can start working in the fold so that your page will bend pretty freely. Page 2. Don't forget, if you get glue in places you don't want it, that's fine. We're going to cover up the pages and no one's really going to be looking in the gusset. And if you use art glitter glue, at least I know it dries clear and matte, so you won't really notice. There we go. Just kind of lining those up, making sure they're adhered, and then I'm just going to fold it down a little bit. Doing this, folding it down and loosening up that binding piece is going to also help you lay in the next page. So I'm going to do the rest of these pages. So now we've got our last page. I have this back piece that has about an inch and a half, just a scored piece of cardstock that is the end of the gusset binding that we created. And so I'm going to go ahead and just glue this one down. The what you want to check for here is that, let's see here, is that the actual gusset piece, the flat piece, if you remember from when we made the gusset, is actually well adhered. And really this last kind of check is to make sure that the entire binding is glued down well. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little more glue here, since I can tell that it is not adhered very well on that piece that's supposed to be flat against the spine. Adding some glue, grab my bone folder, get that burnished. Gotta put enough glue to get that whole gusset piece down, but not so much that it adheres the entire piece down. So there we go. Now I'm going to glue this last piece. Okay, now that that's done, I had folded back the pages this way as I was gluing them in, but now I'm going to go the other way and burnish them down in this orientation. I don't know, they're probably the same fibers involved, but I just want to make sure that they also lay down this way. so that we will have access to them, easy access to them as we are covering our pages. Oh, all right, well, flipping back through and noticing that this has a little bit of space here, so I'm going to get that glued down a little better. Oop, there's the glue. All right, looking pretty good now. So now that we have our pages, I'm going to go ahead and take off the mint tape. I might, if I'm smart about it, set this aside on a scrap, and that way when I am done, I will have all of my notes in one place. Now we're going to let that glue set just for a few minutes while we talk about covering our pages. So these pages are 8 1/4 by 5 1/2, and there are 16 of these, as I'll show you in just a second. So we have 8 actual pages in our book, but we are going to have the front and back. So we have 16 pieces of the designer paper here to cover the pages. So if you've made mini albums in the past and you use this style where you create a page and then cover both sides, then you know that it can get a little confusing when you're gluing things down and suddenly realize that you wanted one side rather than the other. This is the point where I generally take a few minutes and kind of lay them out in the order that I like. If you want to put a Post-it or piece of washi or something on the piece that will be facing outward, that way at a glance you can easily tell. Don't glue the piece with the Post-it or the tape on it. You can do this with any kind of washi tape since you're not going to be writing on it. I just find that the mint tape works for these notes because it takes the pen well. So as I go through this, I am also trying to decide a couple of things. I am going to have some little elements, some different elements on some of the pages. So some of the pages I want to completely glue while others I do not. So I'm going to have a spot for some top loading pockets. So I want to figure out what those are so I don't put glue on the whole page. Of course this one, some of these are easy to tell, and some of them I had to make some serious decisions about what side of the paper I was going to use. So this one I'm using the front.
That's it for part 2 of our cardstock mini album. Join me in part 3 where we will work in our top loading pockets, the fold out photo flaps, and in part 4 we will add our waterfall element and cover the rest of our book. And there will probably be a part 5 where I go through and add the final touches, putting in some embellishments and some of the items from the ephemera packs and the sticker sheets. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you get notified of all of my new videos when they get loaded. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget, safety first.